Hello, everybody. I'm Diana Yoakley, your host and founder of Delight in Parenting. And I'm really excited to be interviewing Dr. Larry Cohen today. Dr. Cohen is the author of Playful Parenting and the Opposite of Worry. He's also the co-author of Unplug and Play, the ultimate guide to roughhousing with your kids, and co-author of 2 books on children's friendships and social relationships. Dr. Cohen offers workshops and trainings across the United States and worldwide through the Playful Parenting International Program. His books have been translated into 18 languages. Welcome, Larry.
Thanks, Diana. Great to be with you.
Great to see you. All right, so we have so much to talk about. First of all, I just wanted to start off with giving parents just a brief overview over what playful parenting is, and how it can help us be better parents and really help our children thrive.
Sure. Playful parenting is kind of an accident of a name because it was the publisher's name for the first book. Really, the heart of it is connection. And I think of 2 great roads to connection for parents and children. And one is play. And so it's not entirely an accident that play is in the title. But it's not always play all the time. That would be exhausting and would not fit the moment a lot of times. So we connect with play, and we also connect with emotional understanding. Oh, you're so sad, or oh, that was scary, or tell me all about it. And so we might get on the floor and play. We might introduce a theme into play. So if a child, like a kindergarten age child or preschool age child has trouble with separation, going to school, we might play a game about saying hello, saying goodbye. The stuffed animals might say, "Oh, I missed you so much. Why did you have to go to school?" So we can use play, but there are other times if we're not feeling playful, or if the emotions are very strong, where play is just the wrong note, and so we join and connect. That's what's in common, but we do it with tuning into the child's emotions, letting them know, I see you, I hear you, I want to know all about it.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like the parents really have to follow the child's lead in terms of what's an appropriate approach. What's the child kind of
Yeah, I
feeling
think
up
following
for?
the child's lead is really crucial, but not always, right? So partly the
Mm-hmm.
idea is that we have to drag children into the adult world a lot. The adult world of schedules and meal times and bedtimes and all the stuff that they don't get to decide. And that's okay. But we can help that out, balance it out a little bit by having playtime be an area of life where they do get to decide. They can be in charge when it comes to play. They can win the game. They can cheat a little bit if they feel like cheating. It's not a big deal. It's not going to make them a criminal. We follow their lead. And then with emotions, we follow them because if they're sad, we might just really put on that little bit of a sad face and say, oh, what's going on? And not try to cheer them up and, hey, I got you a new toy and let's go get ice cream, which is too abrupt and of course we want them to cheer up and be happy, but we want to join them first and not force them out of what they're feeling, but really join them in what they're feeling first.
Right. So like meet them where they're at first and then, yeah. Love that. So, in your book, you talk a lot about how parents can get started on playful parenting, and becoming a playful parent. And this maybe sounds a little hard to some parents that, are in the adult world a lot, and it's hard to transition from the adult world into the children's world. Maybe they avoid getting on the floor with the kids for a variety of reasons, whether it's like the games are too boring or, it's hard to like stop your to-do list and play children's games. How do you think self-compassion helps
Mm.
empower parents to choose
Mhm.
play, like consciously choose play over avoiding it? Um, because
Yeah,
it's hard, especially when it's outside their comfort zones to
sure.
play.
So I've experienced all that. I'm too tired. This game is boring. Um, that I just can't move. I don't feel like it. I've got too many other things to do. I've got more important things to do. And I've also experienced the, why am I worrying about cleaning up the toys instead of really focusing on this child here? And so I think self-compassion comes in when we realize that it's never going to be perfect, that our children would love to have 30 hours a day of our undivided attention, and maybe from 2 or 3 different people. 30 hours a day of 3 or 4 different people's undivided attention. And the math doesn't add up. They will always be disappointed in that. And that's okay. And the self-compassion is in the spot where I'm giving my all, I'm giving my best, I'm holding some back for myself. That's okay. I can't give undivided attention very much because there's more than one kid, or because my child is not my only life obligation or even my only life interest. And so if we can let go of the guilt and the perfectionism and the comparisons, then we have that self-compassion. And any moment that I play, any moment that I tune in, any moment that I can find some empathy inside instead of the rage, those are good moments. And I can be
Mhm.
proud of those, and I can feel good about those. I think that's really key. And we put connection first with our children. Connection, I would love to throw out control and replace control with connection. Anywhere you would use control, you have to control yourself. It's like, no, we have to reconnect. We have to connect with each other. You and your sister stop fighting. It's like, I wonder what's making it hard for these 2 kids to connect with each other right now. They're really feeling disconnected. Or maybe they're having fun, but I can't stand it. So I need to connect with this. And maybe I need to connect with myself. So connecting with children and connecting with ourselves really go hand in hand. They really are part of the same thing. I don't know that we could do one without the other.
Mm.
So back to, how do you motivate yourself to get off the couch and play, get on the floor and play with young kids, or say, hey, show me your video game, to a bigger kid, things that are not your number one interest and you don't have the energy for. Well, you do it not because you love playing Barbies or you love video games. You do it because you love your child. And you do it because somewhere inside you remember, oh, this is what I had, or this is what I wanted and needed. And it's
Mm.
okay if you didn't get it. It's easier if we got 100% undivided attention, and we got lots of play time, we got lots of reflection of our emotions. That's kind of the easy way. It makes it a lot easier to dole that out if we've gotten a big heaping supply of it growing up.
Mhm.
But it's okay if we didn't. And if we didn't get that growing up, we can still find it inside. Because part of us knew, even if we didn't get it, part of us knew that we wanted it and deserved it and needed it. And if we can tap into that, then we can give it to our children. And if we didn't have all that the easy way, if we didn't have it all handed to us, then that's another place for compassion. You could think of it as self-compassion. I like to think of it as compassion for that little boy or that little girl who maybe got yelled at instead of got parented with connection, maybe got hit, maybe got sent away, was not seen, was not understood, and compassion for that child who just wanted to be seen, just wanted to be held and loved and understood. So I think whenever we play with our kids, whenever we connect with them, whenever we understand them, whenever we reflect their emotions, we're doing a little bit of reparenting of ourselves. We're either reminding ourselves of the good stuff we got when we were little, or we're repairing the hole that was caused when we didn't get it when we were little.
I love that. So really, when your child asks you to get on the floor and play and you feel that resistance, it's really an opportunity for healing yourself. It's like an invitation to come back to yourself and close that gap of avoidance inside of you.
Right. And it's okay sometimes to say, I can't do one more game. But we can do it in a little bit of a lighthearted way. I think often we feel bad and we don't like to feel bad, and we either collapse or we get angry. I think these are two big directions that we can go as parents. One is kind of this collapse, surrender, and the other is lashing out. And there's always something we can find to lash out about, right? Because our children don't come and say, excuse me, is this a good time to ask you a question? And oh, it is, okay. Well, I've been thinking that maybe we could have a little more playtime, and maybe that now would be a good idea to have I have some ideas for some games we could play. Our children don't do that. They kick the cat, or they annoy their little sister, or they draw on the wall, or they say, play with me, play with me, play with me, play with me, play with me. And all these things that don't trigger our best selves, but trigger a lot of unpleasant and difficult feelings inside of us. So I like the idea of translation. So we take something, especially if something happens a lot and it's annoying to you, to think about, what if you translated that into some different language? So annoy my little sister or annoy my big brother is translated into, I need more connection. I need somebody to see me. I need to be big. I need to be little again, whatever the need might be. And we don't have to get it exactly right. You don't have to be a mind reader and a master psychologist who can tell exactly what children are feeling. Just the exercise of thinking about, I wonder what this signals in terms of a need or in terms of an emotion. And then if I translate that, that's so much easier to respond to. A kid's annoying. Well, we respond with annoyance. But if it's, things have been difficult. Have you noticed that things have been difficult around the house and very stressful lately? And I need a little more, some more hugs and a little more playtime and maybe some wild roughhousing play. If a child came and asked us that, most of us would say, oh, yes, thank you for reminding me of that. Most of the time,
Right.
Sometimes we're too far gone and we wouldn't, even if they came with an engraved invitation like that, we still probably might say no. But if we can translate it, and that really is what they're saying. We
can trust that is what they're saying. We can trust in that.
I think it's always what it means. Yeah. Yeah, I need you. I need something. I'm feeling something that's overwhelming and I can't handle it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's probably the same thing for us when we're feeling like, we're responding in an unskillful way. we're also communicating, and we probably need to translate our own experience into the same,
Absolutely.
because
Right. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if somebody could come along when we're at our worst moments and not shame us and not criticize us and not put us in the bad parent, thing, or tell us we're terrible, but instead would say, oh, you're really feeling overwhelmed. Oh, you're really angry. I get that. Ugh. Or, oh, you need some downtime. You haven't had any downtime. You need to do something that's fun for you because you've been taking care of everybody else. If somebody could see past our bad behavior, the same way that we could see past our children's misbehavior and instead see
the underlying needs.
Yeah, the needs, the feelings underneath that, the tension. Children are so sensitive to stress and tension. We swallow it so much as adults.
And that really leads me into like, you're a big proponent of listening partnerships and talking about somebody coming to us in those difficult moments to validate our experience and tell us, it's okay to feel the way we're feeling, to normalize it, to create like a common humanity. Can you explain for people that don't know what a listening partnership is, a little bit of its like origin,
Sure.
benefits it offers to parents?
Yeah. So the term listening partnership was coined by Patty Whipfler at Hand in Hand Parenting. And it is pretty simple. It's two parents, or really any two people, taking turns listening to each other. And if you do it once, and you listen to me for 5 minutes, and then I listen to you for 5 minutes, that's great. If you do it regularly, and week after week, we have maybe 5 minutes every morning when we just check in and it's like, or, oh, let me tell you the great thing that happened. And the other person just listens. They don't give advice. They don't interrupt. They don't say me too. They just say, oh, yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that. Now will you listen to me? If you do that day after day for 5 minutes, or week after week for an hour, it's even more powerful because this great trust develops. And I don't know how I could have gotten through the early years with my daughter, or then later, the first years that I was with my stepson, which is a whole different set of challenges, without listening partnerships. So I'll just tell a couple stories about it. So when my daughter Emma was about 4 years old, she had met the person that I was doing a lot of listening partnerships with, but I don't think she had any understanding of what a listening partnership was, or what I did. I did them when she wasn't around, or sleeping or whatever. And so I was really surprised one day. We were arguing about something, and I don't remember what the content was, but we were in her room. I remember that, and we were arguing, and I was trying to leave so that we could cool the temperature down. But as soon as I went to leave, she would grab my leg and say, don't go, don't go, don't go. And I'd say, fine, okay, I'll stay. And then she would yell at me and tell me I was doing something wrong, or something, outrageous. And I was really feeling completely helpless. And I really wanted to leave. And that would escalate things. Staying was not helping. I didn't know what to do. So I just said, I've got to go call Chris. And that was my listening partner, Christina. And Emma said, good idea, go call Chris. And I couldn't believe it. It's like, and it makes sense to me now. It's like, of course, if children are so sensitive and tuned in, she had to have seen what I was like before and after. And I had planned to call Chris and complain, and she's being so obnoxious and so difficult and so whiny, and blah, blah, blah. And instead I just told her this story, and I just laughed and laughed and laughed. And she said, yeah, I'm smart.
She was supportive of your own
She
way to
is like,
self-regulate.
finally I had a good idea. Right? Because to just leave her alone, even though maybe somewhere inside she knew, like, if I could leave and calm down, it would be better. Like, I knew that. She's little. She couldn't really get that.
Mm-hmm.
And staying, I didn't have any good ideas, right? But this calling my listening partner so that I could unload and then be ready for more, that she knew was a good idea. The other story with Christina was Emma's favorite game when she was 3 was Ariel the Little Mermaid. And the way you play Ariel the Little Mermaid was you take the dolls and you take their clothes off and you put new clothes on and you have a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so boring and so sexist and so stupid. And I hated this game. And I played it a lot, but sometimes it's like, I would literally fall asleep sometimes. And she would get really mad. And I would try to introduce ideas like, well, maybe we could be friends. I'd be Prince Eric. And she's like, you will marry me. And she'd whack my doll with her doll. So I really was feeling frustrated because I knew this is the game she wanted to play. And I was saying no to her so much. And this is before I really wrote Playful Parenting, but I still had the idea that I wanted to say yes more often than saying no.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was having a listening partnership with Christina. And I started saying, I'm going to throw those toys away. I'm going to roll over them with the car. And I'm going to tell her that they're made in sweatshops and explain what sweatshops are. And then she won't want them. And I'll tell you can't buy them anymore. And Chris said, do you feel better after your temper tantrum? And I said, I'm not having a temper tantrum. Like, oh yeah, I do feel better after my temper tantrum. And I realized it's like the light came out, the sun came out, and everything was clearer and the colors were brighter. And I just unloaded this to somebody who was not going to tell me I'm a bad parent, who's not going to tell me she's a bad kid, somebody who's just going to listen. And that's what it took. The sun came out and I realized this is her favorite thing in the whole world. And I'm telling her it's stupid and boring and sexist. Like, she doesn't understand that. She doesn't know what that means. She just knows that hurts for me to say that. And I don't want to do that. So I hung up and I found her and I said, hey, let's play Ariel the Little Mermaid. And she was a little suspicious. But I said, no, yeah, let's play. And I set the timer, kind of secretly set a timer for 10 minutes. I thought I can play with extra enthusiasm for 10 minutes. And so I did. I was just really enthusiastic. And all of a sudden, the game stopped being boring. And I realized all this time, the game was boring because of me. I really was secretly worried that my kid was boring and uncreative.
It was hard to engage in it fully present because of the fears.
Present. Right. I was like, okay, all right. But I was just engaged and I was enthusiastic. And within a few minutes, we were having a rock concert and we were throwing the dolls and we were chasing them. I hated that it was just like, but we were running all over the house and we were doing all this stuff and it was really fun. And then the timer went off and I didn't want to stop. And I couldn't believe it that I was actually enjoying playing Ariel the Little Mermaid.
Yeah, the power of that listening partnership.
Yeah.
So what would you say happens on those calls?
Well,
yeah.
So there's Pam Leo wrote a book about connection parenting. She talks about emptying the feelings bucket. So this was, I talked about filling up the love cup so that when we hug children and we love them and we rock them and we give them what they need and we feed them and we play with them and we listen to them, we fill up that cup of love. And the cup of love gets emptied, a long day or stress or anger or separation, empties, it gets to be refilled. So I sang this to Pam, and Pam said, yeah, but before you can have your love cup filled up, you have to empty out your feelings bucket. And so feelings aren't good or bad, but they get clogged up and they get built up, and we need to just get them out. And in our society, we're told, don't cry, don't be angry, don't let other people see that you're afraid. There's so much pressure to suppress emotions. And so in a listening partnership, all it takes is for the other person to not freak out when you have a feeling. And when you're talking freely and somebody's listening, you start talking from the heart and things arise and the feelings come pouring out. And it might be tears, or it might be fear, or it might be words and talking and memories. It could be all kinds of things. It could be laughing. I spend a lot of time in listening partnerships laughing. But it empties out that feelings bucket. And then you can think more clearly. You can see more clearly. Because the other person's not giving you advice, which, we all have people who give us advice. We have plenty of that. So here's a place where somebody doesn't give you advice. What that signals is, I trust you. You might not figure this out today. You might not figure this out this year, but I trust you, and I trust that your own solution that comes from inside will be better than anything that I could tell you or any expert could tell you. So those words don't even have to be spoken. I think that happens when somebody listens, really, really listens. So we get the emptying of the feelings bucket, we get the respect and the confidence and the trust that, yeah, you'll figure this out. We get into a panic as parents. We care about parenting so much, and we get so triggered that we get into that panic mode. And so I've had so many times where I'm, and my listening partner is pretty calm. And I can tell they're not calm because they don't care about me. They're calm because everything is fine. And so I see that. And oh yeah, everything is fine. So I guess I'm layering on some different things that happen.
Yeah.
Seeing reality more clearly, seeing that things are, just what they are. And again, I think this brings us back to self-compassion, and mindfulness more generally. The idea of this is just what is. This is not bad. It's not terrible. It's not the end of the world. It's not a crisis. It might not be pleasant. I might want to try to figure it out, but I can be okay. And this is okay. This moment, nothing terrible is happening.
And I think having, a witness to our experience obviously adds a huge element of common humanity, in self-compassion. The research shows that there's an element of common humanity. And I wonder, what your thoughts are on, do you think self-compassion starts within ourselves or with a compassionate other giving us that compassion first? And the way I kind of think about it sometimes is self-regulation. We know that children don't learn self-regulation on their own. They first you co-regulate, and then we self-regulate. And I wonder if you think self-compassion from that example of listening partnership, and probably early experiences of being parented with responsiveness, is that how we build a larger resource of self-compassion, as parents today, for our children to have self-compassion as well? So
yeah, I don't know if I've ever thought about kind of the chicken and egg question about that. I imagine it can happen either way. That yeah, a lot of times we tune in, we tap into experiences when someone was compassionate with us in childhood or right now, this moment. And this fills up our well of compassion. We can have more compassion for others, more for ourselves. But I think if we didn't get it, and we're not getting it, that we can still find it. I think there's a kernel of compassion that's just part of being human. And maybe not only human, I don't know, but I know for sure about being human that we have that kernel, and it takes a lot for that to be destroyed. You know, because even people under dire circumstances, and who've had terrible traumas,
right, you
often see this capacity for compassion, especially compassion for others.
Right. Yeah, I definitely believe it can't be destroyed. I just wonder if it comes more alive when we have another person kind of helping us, like,
I think it makes the voice louder, right?
Right.
Because I think that voice of compassion can be very quiet. It can be it can be silenced. I think that well-meaning parents often interfere with children's natural compassion because, like, for example, children are very interested in people who are different, and they'll point and they'll ask questions, and the things that from an adult point of view might be very rude. And so we're told, don't point, or don't say that, or ooh, be quiet. And really, that curiosity is part of the seeds of the compassion of this person's different from me. That's interesting. I think children have that natural sense of, oh, this person's like me. That's great. This person's different from me. That's interesting. And I want to know about that. Or this person looks like they're suffering. You know, I'm interested. I care. You know, why is that person in a chair, instead of walking? You can't, it's harder to develop a caring and understanding if you're told, shh, be quiet, don't mention that, don't talk about that. And we say those things to kids because we're embarrassed and we're afraid and we don't want to say the wrong thing. We don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. But we need to find a way that we can support children's curiosity and natural compassion.
And protect that natural compassion that's in there.
While still being thoughtful about,
right,
not being rude and inconsiderate.
Yeah, I love that, because it's not just about our own, like, touching our own self-compassion, using it in day-to-day parenting, but it's also fostering and maintaining the children's natural compassion, like you said.
And the whole natural flow of feelings, and I think another place where I think we get off track is we try to teach children compassion by saying, oh, it makes me so sad when you talk like that. It makes me very sad when you and your brother fight. And really, the message is not, I'm sharing how I feel. I think that's the intention, but the message underlying it is, you should feel bad about this. You should do something different so I don't feel this way. And shoulds are just a natural enemy of compassion. I think shoulds are, the enemy of moral development, even though we use shoulds all the time to try to teach moral development. Like, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. But really, moral development is not, oh, I should. It's, I want to. We don't want children to just do the right thing because they'll get in trouble if they don't. Right? We want them to do the right thing because they want to. They care.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And just really being mindful again about what we're saying to children, how we're expressing ourselves. So important. And speaking of the child's perspective, in all of your books, you do such a great job in showing us what the child's perspective is, their honest, truthful, like, experience, which oftentimes from the adult perspective, we forget what it's like to be kids. And how do you think the self-compassion parenting influences a parent's ability to see things from the child's perspective, per se? Like,
Well,
putting yourself in their shoes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I really appreciate that you see that thread in my work of remembering what it was like to be a child. My big heroes are people who remember what it was like to be a child, and so I've really reached for that. I think there's a strong link between self-compassion and empathy and remembering and being able to tune into children, because I think that feeling guilty, feeling bad, feeling wrong, feeling like we're not doing it right, we're not doing it enough, all of these things really get in the way. We have this idea that, why do we feel guilty? It's like, I'm going to beat myself up and then I'll be better. But we know beating kids doesn't make them better. And we know beating ourselves doesn't make us better. That it's understanding and care and compassion that makes us better. I don't even like that word better. It's not like we were bad and we need to be better. But
more connected, or more
connected, more able to really be with our children, to be fully present with them, and to give them what they need, and to get on the floor and play, and to recognize when they're upset and not yell at them for it, but instead be with them. All those things, if that we try to use, I don't think it's conscious usually, but unconsciously we try to use guilt and self beatings and feeling bad, and we try to use all that to get ourselves motivated, or to get unstuck or something. But kindness, compassion, I think this is actually the way. I'll give an example of we talked about listening partnerships, and in a group, so group listening, which is something that we do at Playful Parenting workshops, and group listening is basically same as listening partnership, but it's 3 or 4 or more people in a group, and each person takes a turn, and everyone else is the listener. So nobody's giving advice, nobody's making comments, we're all just really listening. And there was a group of parents, and it was a group that I had met with many times. And there was one mom in the group who was really feeling down on herself. Her child was struggling, she was struggling, she felt like a failure. And even though this was group listening and people were supposed to not give comments, people were still, it's hard not to. So people say, oh, you're a great mom, you're a great mom, and don't say that about yourself, and oh, you're a great mom. And this didn't help. The mom really did not, felt worse. And I think later was able to say it really felt unseen and unheard. But one day, one person said, that does not sound like your best day. Sounds like you kind of messed that up. And this mom didn't take that as a criticism. It felt like a validation. And she cried and cried and felt like, you really, really see me. And she felt honored and validated from somebody recognizing the truth of the situation. And so it's important to not see self-compassion as, oh, you're wonderful, you're perfect. That wasn't a mistake, that wasn't bad. It's okay, so what? It's not any of those things. So yeah,
it's being with like that, the reality of what is.
Yeah,
joining them there.
But without the blame and without that added judgment and shame of you're bad about it. It's like, yeah, that wasn't good. And that, when parents will often, like at a playful parenting workshop, parent will talk about yelling at their children or hitting their children or something like that. And of course, I want to help them get to a place where they don't feel up against the wall like that, and they have other alternatives and they choose other alternatives. But you have to start with where people are.
Right.
But it's also doesn't make sense to say, oh, that's fine.
Right.
Because the kid got hit, kid got yelled at. This is not fine. And yet the parent is still good, right? So it's a little bit of like walking on a tightrope, So I'll often say, I hear this and I feel so much empathy for your child, and I feel so much empathy for you. And I hear how it pains you to think about, that you hit him. And I know that it hurts to get hit, especially by your mom. And there's just so much pain there. And I feel like that's a compassionate response. That's saying, oh, don't worry about it. That's not compassionate. Certainly not empathic for the child. And saying, oh, you're bad, you have to not do that, and you're really in bad trouble, and you're a bad parent. There's no compassion for the parent there. So yeah, the reality, and then the change is that paradox of acceptance and change.
Right. That's the motivation. That compassion that they get is the motivation, I think, that they need to do something differently next time.
Right.
I know you've mentioned emotions flowing like a river in parenting, speaking about these overwhelming emotions that can overtake a parent, to yelling or spanking or whatever. How does self-compassion, do you think, play a role in allowing these emotions to flow naturally? Or if you want to speak more about that, emotions flowing like a river, and how to apply it in stressful situations.
Yeah. When emotions are explosive, it looks like the problem is the emotion, but it's not. The problem is the suppression of the emotion that we didn't see, that's kind of invisible. And then we see the explosion, because suppression never lasts forever. It's not possible. And so it has to come out. And then when it comes out, it looks like, oh, you see, I should never get angry. Well, if we had taken that first beginning as it's first starting to arise, and instead of shoving it down, if we said, I'm angry. Oh, I'm really quite angry. Yeah, oh yeah, 7, 8, I'm getting up there. If we can acknowledge it and recognize it and think about, okay, how can I get this out in a safe way? Then, and maybe it's at 3 or 4 or 5, and I can take a breath and I can release my hands, and maybe that's enough to get it out. I think often when it's up higher, those little mindful moments are not enough, and we have to get it out. And so it's, or I used to have in my office, I used to have this calendar. I shared an office, and there was this calendar that is not something I would have ever bought. And it was this like really pretty flowers on each month. And it was fine. It's just was not my style. But I discovered a great way for me to get like feelings out. If I was just by myself and I just had a few minutes, I would like just look at those pretty little flowers and like, I'm going to stomp on you, I'm going to smash you, I'm going to rip you up. And it was just so satisfying. And, and nothing got hurt. And I didn't destroy my coworker's property, it was all in my head. But it was getting it out rather than just, what's wrong with me? I shouldn't feel this way. I better put a lid on it. But we know what happens when you put a lid on the boiling water, the pressure builds up. So flow is what we need. What we've been taught all about emotions is wrong, I think, which is that the goal is to control them, to manage them, to regulate them. Just the new term is emotional regulation. That to me is too close to emotional control. So the language I like to use is flow. It's see emotions, meet emotions, greet emotions, take care of emotions. So when it's our own emotion, then taking care of our own emotion requires self-compassion. It's like, I'm scared, and so I'm scared, and I have a voice in my head that's like, what are you were kind of a loser, coward. I have that voice, and that can be loud and clear when I'm scared. But there's another voice that, sometimes is clear and sometimes is hidden, which is, oh, you're scared. Yeah, that was scary. It makes sense that you were scared. I think things are safe. You could look around and see there's not a danger, but I get that you were scared.
And just accepting it more in like a befriending kind of way.
Exactly. Befriend it, accept it. And to have that compassion with ourselves for having emotions, because it's normal, it's human.
And of course, the same thing is true for our children. Just, exactly. Especially if we're on the path to like more connected parenting, peaceful parenting, I think we do try to give our children that freedom to befriend their emotions. We're working hard on it, but then we get swept up in our own sometimes. Or, even if you're just starting out with parenting differently, playful parenting, peaceful parenting, maybe you still struggle with your children's exaggerated expression of emotions.
Exactly. Young children, it's like they invented each emotion, they inhabit it fully. And most of us were not ever allowed or given the room to do that. And so we can have a combination of, we want to shut it down and we're jealous that they get to do it, and we don't want anybody else to see it, and we have the voice in our head saying cut that out, or the voice that says have a cookie, whatever, different ways that we respond to these big emotions. And so it takes some practice to say, tell me more.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much great wisdom here talking with you today. Is there anything else you'd like to add, just on the various topics we've touched on? So much good information.
Yeah. There's a story I would love to share. I think is a good ending point, which is, there was a mom who said that she found herself yelling at her kids and even sometimes hitting them. And she really hated this. And her mother had yelled at her and hit her, and she swore that she would never do this when she became a mom. And here she was finding herself doing it also, and then feeling really guilty about it and feeling terrible. And willpower was not working to not do it. And she couldn't understand why she kept doing it when she really didn't want to, so out of line with her values and her decisions. And what she finally realized was, she said, I realized that when my mom yelled at us and hit us, she was up against the wall. And when I think about her life, I can understand why she felt up against the wall. And so my job is not to not hit. My job is to not get up against the wall like that. And this I thought was very profound. And this is actually something that she could manage to do, because to force yourself by willpower not to yell when you're completely triggered and you're against a wall, that's nearly impossible. But to recognize when you're coming up against the wall and everything's loading up on you, and to say, hold on, I need a break. I need somebody to listen to me. I need to call a friend to say, can you take all the kids today and I'll take them tomorrow? That's the real change. It's really trying to hit it at a different spot. And the other consequence of this realization was much more compassion for her mother. Because before that, she was feeling like she was always angry at her mother for yelling at her.
Right.
But now I'm doing the same thing, but I'm still angry at her for doing it. But now I know my kids are going to be angry at me for doing it. It didn't make her less angry at her mother just because she was doing it.
Right.
But to recognize that the conditions of life were what made that the thing that came out, and that she, for whatever reason, didn't have that insight or didn't have the resources to not be able to get to that point. That gave her compassion for her mother, compassion for herself.
It's almost like a sense of empowerment that she can make a different choice versus just on autopilot, whatever the habits were that were ingrained, just letting them take charge versus consciously realizing I have more power than my mother did, possibly in this situation.
Exactly. And to use all the resources available rather than try to use willpower.
Right. Support yourself versus force yourself.
Right.
Which we all know everybody has a breaking point, right? And staying away from that edge is our most important job, really, right? Yeah, I love that. Hitting it at a different spot earlier on.
Yeah. I think if you remember that, we'd be kinder to each other as parents.
And more supportive as well, right?
Exactly. I know I've given my share of dirty looks to parents who are being mean to their kids, but that's not what I want to do. I want to, I'm a little shy, so I don't go over and say, looks like you're having a hard day, or but I try to just non-verbally offer support rather than dirty looks when a kid's having a tantrum in the store.
Right. Because even that energy and that body language you're displaying to them is a message of resourcing for them.
Right.
Which will help them handle their child even better.
Right. They don't need our dirty look, shaming and correction.
Yeah. Love that. That's great. That's so insightful. So it's great to talk to you. Can you tell us a little bit about where parents can find out more about all the wonderful things you're doing in the world?
Sure. The best way to stay up to date is to send me an email at, you can send it to Larry@playfulparenting.com. So if you send me an email, Larry@playfulparenting.com, I'll put you on my newsletter list. And the newsletter has all the most up-to-date information about trainings or things like this, everything else that Playful Parenting has to offer.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And
you bet.